Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I have this super cute and bright birthday card to show you. To make this card, I used some of the new release items from Lawn Fawn, the Snow Much Fun bears, and the new waving interactive die set. As soon as I saw this die set, I knew I wanted to get in on it while it was still new, rather than wait and see all of the add-ons and then get lost and behind like I do with some of the other interactive ones. This one looked fairly simple, and so I knew I wanted to use it. And I've got a few ideas of other things I want to do with it too. It's very rare for me to grab a matching die set, but these Snow Much Fun ones, the ones I just pointed out, I figured this set would be incredibly hard to use without them, and so I feel like that warrants buying a matching set. Just like with all my cards, I am starting off by stamping out the images that I'm going to use. For this one, I'm doing 3 bears. 2 of them are going to have that extra bit of torso, and one of them is going to have waving arms. Here I am lining up all the pieces for this interactive die. I actually found this one very easy to use. Sometimes I find the interactive dies a little bit intimidating, but I'm really surprised at how easy this one was to set up. I really can't wait to see what they bring out for this one in the future. For this piece of the interactive die, I cut it twice because the paper that I'm using is quite thin. It's not as thick as a regular cardstock, so I doubled it up to make it a bit more sturdy. For my background, I decided to go very pink. I used some worn lipstick, picked raspberry, and seedless preserves. I just love how these 3 blend together. Once all of my ink blending was done, I then sprayed some water over the top. I do this to get really tiny droplets, and then I take the top out of my little spray bottle and flick it all over the place so that I get some heavier drops. I love the way this looks. After that, I then add some of my favorites. I don't think it would be a card of mine if these didn't make an appearance. My gold watercolor pigments, this time using the white gold to splatter some flecks all over it. This makes it super shiny. And then, to go even more shiny, I use some of my new stickles. I'm getting the hang of this. I'm still not really good at this. I do need some more practice. But I used it with my new starry Lawn Fawn stencil to create an extra sparkly starry background. I found taping it down very handy because I think I just push around with a heavy hand and everything moves on me all the time. So I found this to be really helpful. Unfortunately, this stencil is always just a little bit too short for the cards that I make, so I do have to be careful at one end, and when I do the main piece of the card, I then wriggle the stencil over to finish off that last little bit that sticks out. And here it is once it had dried, incredibly shiny. That was the look I was going for. Now on to colouring these cute bears. For the bears themselves, all I used was my set of skin tone Copic markers, using my super simple technique of just 2 colours per bear for some very easy shading. I did forget while I was colouring these in that I didn't actually need to colour in all the faces because I had those extra bits with their face and their arms. I think it's just a habit to see an image and colour the whole thing in, and we've never used stamps like this. Well, I've never used a stamp set like this before where there's added layers to it. It's something I'll have to get used to because I have a feeling I'm going to be using this set quite a lot. The way that I coloured these bears was all pretty much the same, just using different shades, so I won't show all of my colouring in this video. At this point, I was ready to start assembling all of these little interactive pieces. I didn't have any brads that were small enough for this, Since making this card, I have ordered some very small ones, but these bigger ones that I used did actually do the job. I just had to make that hole a little bit bigger. It was a little bit messy, but at least this is on the inside of the card and you couldn't really see it. By inside of the card, I mean it was under a few layers. And it still moved very smoothly. It was just a little bit thick having such a big brad. I love those little arms. I think I actually did them upside down to what you're meant to do, but I really wanted it to look like the bear in the middle was cheering rather than just waving his arms around. These bears were super easy to assemble. I love that I bought the matching dies for these because it means that these are cut perfectly and they line up beautifully. I don't have to worry about my cutting out and that things might be a bit wonky. I did just have to remember not to glue their little hands down or the part of their arms that is closer to their tummy so that I can slip some things in there for them to hold. Here I am securing the sliding piece of this interactive die. As much as I wanted these bears to party, I didn't want them to be all over the place. And every time I grab that, I just can't help but wiggle the arms. It's so funny. Now these bears needed some party accessories. They were looking a little bit plain. So I used these hats out of some older stamp sets. I think it might be the Party Animal stamp set because I finally have that one now. And I coloured them in just a range of pinks and purples that kind of match the background. It was then time for my favourite part of this card, dressing up these little bears with their party hats and their little party accessories. For the sentiment on the front of this card, I kept it fairly simple using this new scripty birthday die. To colour it in, I used some of the matching colours for the little hats and presents and roughly halved the word, colouring the top half of it in one colour, the bottom half in another, and just doing a very rough blend in between. As I used markers that were similar to the background, I needed to do something to make sure this sentiment stood out. And the easiest way to do that was to just cut another piece of that scripty birthday word, but this time in black, so that I could pop the coloured layer over the top and it would give this little shadow. It's a super simple move, but it really does make things stand out. It was then time to start assembling this card. With that brad being so thick and with the moving parts between the card front and the card base, I needed to add something between those layers that was nice and thick so that everything could move freely. For this, I used some kids' craft foam. It's very cheap and was just the right thickness. I cut it so that it was just smaller than my card front and would sit nicely behind it. I then trimmed down that piece of the pull tab mechanism that is really long. It didn't need to be this long for this card. It would still work if I trimmed it down. So once I did that, I then measured out how much of the foam I could cut out on the back so that that whole moving piece would sit nicely in a little pocket. This way, my card looked pretty seamless all around the edges except for the tiny little bit at the top that you pull up and down. At this point, my sentiment only said birthday, so I needed the word happy. So I actually pinched it from, I think it was the Happy Village stamp set that said happy housewarming because I liked how big that word was. So I just stamped out the word happy. As you can see, I remembered my anti-static powder this time. I then covered it in embossing powder and took it over to my heat tool to heat emboss. I then trimmed it out with one of my smallest banner dies. Here I am gluing down the birthday and finding where I wanted to put the little happy. Our centre bear also needed to hold something. I didn't just want his little arms waving, so I gave him two of these little party blower noisemaker things. I think they make him look even more excited to party. Just as a quick final touch, I needed to colour in the spot where the little arrow was going to show for the little pull tab piece. So I coloured it in with one of the markers that matched the rest of the card. And the little piece that goes over it to show the arrow, I cut out of black cardstock to tie all the colours in together. To adhere thick card fronts onto my card bases, I used some strong double-sided tape. Once the card front was placed on top, that was pretty much this card finished and ready to send off to one of my crafty friends for her birthday. Here's a better look at it moving. I absolutely love that little excited bear in the middle, partying with his little bear friends. Absolutely adorable. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and please don't forget to subscribe. My subscriber count has jumped so much recently. I think I am already nearly at 800. I am just blown away and so grateful to everyone who is subscribed already. Hope you'll join me for the next video. Bye!